welcome to our February edition of Center Stage. I'm Walter Lascos. In this program, we're going to take you to Albany, New York, so you can learn about the Media Production Center, which the province and the Diocese of Albany are jointly utilizing. We're also going to take you to Washington, D.C., where Vincent Cushing and Joe Nangle got together for a conversation on investments in the province. But first up, here's our Minister Provincial, Anthony Carrozzo, with a message for all of us.
Brothers, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you once again. In a recent conversation with one of the friars of the province, he asked me, "How do you think the province is doing?" I was really taken back by the question and told him I thought that the question probably should be answered by the friars in the province rather than by me. However, I did think about the question. How do I think the province is doing? I would say generally good. There seems to be a very good spirit of cooperation among the friars. There seems to be a spirit of honesty, a spirit of openness. There also seems to be an energy in the province which is very wholesome. Of course, there is still some cynicism, but there always will be. And there are still day-to-day difficulties which are part of the human condition. But as I reflected upon the answer to the question, I also thought about my greatest concern. And I think that you will be surprised to hear that it is not a major concern, but it is truly a difficulty. The greatest difficulty I see among us day to day are the rumors and the gossip that follow us everywhere we go. To some extent, it's a way of life. And there is no way that my speaking to you is going to change that way of life. And yet I want to bring it to your attention primarily because I think it creates a lot of difficulties among us. First of all, rumor and gossip are generally based upon very little or no information, and oftentimes I discover even upon misinformation. But none of that seems to matter when we are conveying the rumors and entering into gossip. What does matter, however, are two things. First of all, individual friars are often destroyed by rumor and gossip. Their good name, their reputation, they become suspected characters, which I think is very bad. And secondly, rumors and gossip erode trust among us. And I want to emphasize that because when I was first elected, I said to you, what we want to create in the province is a spirit of trust. So there are occasions when you and I are going to have to look at that which erodes the trust. And rumor and gossip erodes trust. How do we deal with this? Well, I think there's a very old-fashioned solution, and it's called charity. Now, I know that there are those who would say, well, that term isn't used anymore. We need to talk about love. But St. John tells us that they're not the same. Where charity and love prevail, love prevails among us. Sometimes charity does not. And so I really call each one of us, when we are beginning to enter into rumor and gossip, to stop and to be charitable to one another and to the friars that we are talking about. And let me be blunt on one issue. Liquor does not excuse us from being charitable. The old saying in the province that you can say anything you want after 11 o'clock and you are not responsible for it simply isn't true. After 11 o'clock, many a person's good name and reputation has been destroyed. And it is destroyed in the same way that it would be at 11 o'clock in the morning. So I encourage each one of us to really work hard not to enter into rumor and gossip in the province, so that we can maintain the good name of each friar and the spirit of trust that seems to exist. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
By what criteria are investments conducted in a province? We'll hear about this and more when we come back.
First, we'll take a ride in the car, all right?
Why don't you take this gentleman next?
Lady, you just made my day.
Go ahead. Make someone's day. With love.
Last autumn, Joe Nangle wrote a letter to Forum on provincial investments. As we ponder the suggestions which Joe proposed, we thought it may be a good idea if Joe had the opportunity to sit down with Vince Cushing and chat about his ideas. Vincent agreed, and so we gave them center stage in our province. So let's go to Joe and Vince now and their discussion on provincial investments.
I think the first word I'd like to say is a word of thanks to the communications office, to Wally, to the provincial administration ultimately for providing a forum for this kind of discussion. It seems to me that we need these kinds of interchanges to talk about some of the very important things that face our province. Even such a delicate matter as our investment policies and our, actually we're talking about our future, talking about our security, and that's a very important topic, it seems to me. Affects us all, especially those of us who are moving to that point in life where we look down the road and see retirement and perhaps infirmity and old age and so forth. So I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful for you, Vince, for being here as a representative of the administration. I remember the day when a young friar said to me not so long ago that he had approached a member of previous administration, which will remain nameless, and asked him about something about our stock portfolio, and was told to get lost. That doesn't happen anymore. In fact, we have the possibility of talking frankly about these things. The thing I did in Forum, I think, was mainly directed to something that is known to us, something that perhaps is not quite in the consciousness of all friars, though, and that is a sense of corporate poverty. I think we have centered our thinking about poverty on a personal expression of poverty, our own personal living of the vow of poverty. And what we're talking about in terms of our stock portfolio is a sense of corporate poverty, of Holy Name Province trying to live out an ideal that Francis presents to us in history and that we try to live in the 20th century of our communal living of this vow of poverty. Sandra Schneiders, I think, has said something about religious communities always trying to position themselves on a continuum that runs from wealth to poverty, and we've always tried to move from a position of wealth toward poverty. not ever reaching an ideal, but trying to move in that direction. And that's what I think the thrust of my piece in Forum was all about. I'd just like to review it very briefly and then turn it over to you, Vince, for your reactions. I based whatever I had to say in that little piece on a real shaky stock market, on a stock market that I judged to be in serious trouble. A drop of 500 points in a 2-day period, certain fears about the future, and I think what I concluded from my reading of the present financial situation is that it would be better for us to move perhaps in a direction of poverty in our investment portfolio by investing more perhaps with the poor. And there are some specific suggestions that I'd like to make as we go along, but that mainly was the thesis that I tried to present, that perhaps it's, even for our own self-interest, better to look to investing with the poor, so that if we do lose out in our investments, at least we've lost in the right direction. So that's kind of where I started in this whole Forum piece.
Right. I certainly appreciate the values that you espouse. It seems to me that the issue is not best debated on the level of values that one espouses, however, because if we begin with, say, a debate about values, there's almost no place to go. It's your values against my values, sure, or the good guys against the bad guys, and those kinds of issues. I think what you have to look at is sort of an historical situation in Holy Name Province over the last 85 years. And we are at the beginning of addressing, you might say, the issues of corporate poverty, corporate responsibility, social justice vis-a-vis the whole issue of investments. At the present time, for the first time, literally, I expect in the February council meeting, we will approve a policy of what we call social responsibility. It has been now reviewed by the Justice and Peace Committee. It has been looked at by the Financial Directorate. It has been reviewed by some of our investment managers. And it deals with such questions of ethical investing, alternate investments, careful custody of funds so that there is not, you might say, a greediness in our approach to the question, and such specifics as no investments in alcohol, gaming stocks, armaments, South Africa, etc., where, for example, the province has divested in South Africa. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that, you know, the old cannot, I am not saying, therefore, we must go slow. But I do think that we are at a transitional time in terms of the corporate stance of Holy Name Province, and there will be an ongoing need for this kind of dialogue about where we should go. I am not totally comfortable with your use of the term investment in terms of, well, let's invest with the poor instead of invest with, say, H&R Block. That's, to me, a false dichotomy in the sense of there are practical things that our investments do, and one of the responsibilities of the provincial administration is to find out how do we continue those practical things. And can we get to the level where we can choose to do alternate investments, or investments with the poor? I just literally this morning had a phone call from a religious order saying, is there any possibility of interest-free loans for the care of our elderly? Well, that's the kind of question that we have to look at, exactly, you know? At the same time, our investments frequently themselves at the present time care for our elderly. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to sort of keep open lines of communication and looking at this in something of a dialectical fashion. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And talking through the values.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you've laid it out well. It seems to me that we ought to congratulate ourselves, in a way, as a province, because I think we have been responsible in our investment criterion. I mean, starting with people like Claude Linehan and
Yeah.
Eddie Christie, you had our engagement with the Interfaith Center for Corporate Responsibility in New York. The whole idea of responsible investment is, I think, a very necessary first step that I suppose, well, there's 200 religious communities around the country that have joined this organization, ICCR, and we are one of them. And we were early on in that, and that's wonderful. We've also divested, as you said, and that's a second kind of step.
Yeah.
Divest from firms that do things that we cannot be party to.
Yeah.
Nuclear arms.
Exactly.
Abortifacients.
Exactly.
South Africa, more recently. So I think we ought to say, well, nice going. We've been on the track. I think now the more progressive religious communities, and I work with men's communities around the United States, the more progressive religious communities are looking further into this question, as you probably know. And now we're talking about alternative investments, investments in such kinds of initiatives as community loan funds, where we might think, as some communities have already done, of setting up a portion of our investment monies, of our capital, as a kind of a revolving loan fund for initiatives that are what they call credit-starved. There are initiatives that are in neighborhoods, minorities, women's initiatives, cottage industries that don't get our chance at credit. One group of men, for example, that I know of, not Franciscan, has put aside $400,000 of a $3 million portfolio for a revolving loan. Now, they're making money on that. I mean, it's a revolving loan. The money comes back with small interest, but still they're not losing on their capital. It seems to me that those kinds of initiatives would be the next step in this process that we've been into for, what, 12 years, 15 years now? It's been a while since we've... And I'd like to see that, and that's what I mean by investing with the poor.
Right.
And I think I'd just like to emphasize that I'm not talking about giving away our future. Right. These monies do come back to us, perhaps not with the kinds of rates of interest that we get on the normal stock market, but we're not talking about giving away money. We're talking about lending it to people who really don't get credit anywhere else and receiving it back with some degree of interest, 6–7% sometimes.
Right. I think, you know, one of the issues that we'll be looking at in the future will be, are we open to that kind of alternate investment? And it seems to me, you know, that we probably will be. However, again, I think that the question has to be positioned within a larger context, that the issue of the return on the dollars has to be seen within the whole horizon of what kind of monies do you need for various things during the course of a year. For example, as I was reviewing our budget, say for this coming year, actually for this fiscal year here, not for 88, 89, but 87, 88, the province this year needs $1,667,000 for the care of the sick and retired of this province. Our return on investments as budgeted for this year is $1,330,000.
Deficit.
Well, in the sense of which it constitutes for this province almost 1/4 of its income. And 1/4 of its income from investments is still $337,000 short of dealing with the care of the sick and the retired. And consequently, willy-nilly, we have to look at the issue of return on investments. I'm not saying that that is therefore determinative, but what I am saying is the options presented to us have to be factored into the larger picture of what are the financial needs that are just there before we even do the first bit of work in any fiscal year, you know. Within that context, it seems to me that clearly, and at the present time, the administrative committee of the Council on Finances, which is Ken and Dave and Rayner as treasurer, is looking at the issue of alternative investments, and I think there's clear openness to that. It's just that the old canard that figures don't lie, and that these bills face us
Yeah,
and
right
need,
there.
to be,
Sure.
need to be paid. But I'm quite sure that the province is very, very open on that question.
Yeah. I'm thinking, you know, along those lines that there's sort of two approaches that we might just, for the sake of discussion, look at. One is the way we look at our own future, you and I. I think that the men who are in retirement now have a right to whatever we have been able to afford. They've expected this. We may have to trim our expectations. Those of us who are not younger, but not yet retired. Maybe some of those figures could be looked at in terms of, well, do we need the kind of care that that is, we probably provide top of the line care for our men now. Is that what will we continually want to have that? That's one kind of avenue of reflection that I surely would like to engage in at some point for my own self. You know, what am I expecting down the road? The other one, of course, is what you already said, that the province is open, even in the face of those kinds of stark figures, open to looking at alternative ways of maintaining a portfolio that returns, we get return on our money. I'm wondering what you'd say, Vince, about the possibility of tithing. Tithing of our portfolio, say, what, 5%, 10%? We ask some of our parishes to tithe. What you would say about tithing of our investment portfolio for the poor? It's an idea that is beginning to gain some currency in some of, as I say, the kind of more progressive communities of men and women in the United States. I know there's one group that tithes every contribution to the province, whether from outside or from the work of its men. In this case, it's a man's congregation. In order 10% for what they call mission work. It's not charity. It's again the kind of devoting of funds to what they believe are top priorities. Some of these community loan funds and so forth. I'd just like to get your idea on that, because it seems to me that if we are asking people whom we serve in parishes to tithe for the good order of the parish, we might, as a province, look at ourselves and say, well, ought we not to do that?
Right. Not to play with numbers on this, but as a matter of fact, the province does tithe. The expenses this year under the area of benevolences, which includes charity, gifts and donations, the Poverello Fund, and Anthony Houses, is $507,000 out of an annual budget of $5,678,000. So that, as a matter of fact, over and above the care of the sick and the elderly of the province devotes approximately 10% of its income on an annual basis to such causes. And I think the province has to decide in chapter and as a brotherhood whether it feels comfortable with that. But it would be mistaken to think that the province is in a situation of hoarding money merely for the sake of ourselves or for the luxurious care of the elderly. I think I would differ with you in terms of the level of care that we offer our men. I think we offer reasonable care of them within the same norms of, you might say, middle class, lower middle class of American society in terms of the quality of care offered. To pick up on your first point a bit more, is there is another problem that you don't touch on that I think is important, is that if we have to trim our expectations for the future, I think most of us are comfortable in doing that. What I would not want to see our men coming along faced with is what some of the sisterhoods are unfortunately faced with, where their whole effort now is no longer the apostolic ministry,
Taking care of the elderly.
but take care of the elderly. I would not want to see our future hitched to that kind of a star, but would be much more comfortable to see our future reasonably taken care of within Christian, and I would hope Franciscan values, so that the great apostolic work of the province could go forward, and that we could continue to address the call of the gospel. And some orders of women, and now I gather some orders of men, can't do that.
That's right. No, I have a first-hand experience of that. I don't think I'm talking, though, about that kind of, you know, selling ourselves short for the future and letting our younger men pick up the pieces. It's more, I think, I look at it in my own life, the quality of the care. I wonder really about, you know, a $4,500,000 infirmary for me in the future. I just wonder about that. And I think that in terms of the tithing, I'm not talking really, I know we've been most generous. I've been the recipient of the generosity of the province. I have no quarrel with that at all. I think my tithing idea was simply on the portfolio side of it.
But I don't think you can just hook it in so
Can't do that
simplistically, Joe. I just don't think you can do it that way. I do think you have to look at what is annual income, what are annual expenses, what can we afford to do. Otherwise, you have to bring in such factors as what does the portfolio earn vis-a-vis 10%, and does that then automatically erode the portfolio? If you could give away 10% of your portfolio on an annual basis, then it seems to me, in simple mathematics, at the end of 10 years, there's no portfolio.
Well, giving away, again, is not the term. It's not giving away. It's tithing for this kind of different kind of investment. So we don't give 10% away a year. We get a return on that 10% over a period of time, but that is less than what we're getting.
Then you need 10% plus a certain amount to overcome inflation. Otherwise, you inadvertently erode the whole portfolio.
Well, probably. It would have
So
to
I
be
just think
worked
there's a
out.
lot of mathematics that have to be done on that.
Indeed.
You know?
Would it be something that we would consider, though? You know?
I think we would consider a lot of things. I don't want to be coy with you. It strikes me that your arithmetic is a trifle shaky.
It may be. I don't have the figures to go on.
Heading toward the close of our program, we'll be right back after this break.
So how old did you say this stuff was? It belonged to my great-grandparents. It's almost 100 years old. Look at this one. Oh, that's the bomb.
That was something real bad, wasn't it?
Sarah, could this thing kill us?
Oh, no. All of the people got together last century and got rid of all of the bombs, and there aren't any left.
Let's give the future back to the children.
Oh, look at this.
Our final segment this month takes us to the Catholic Media Office here in Albany, where the province, together with the Catholic Diocese of Albany, is now a partner in the production of videos and is on the brink of launching itself into the electronic media. The Albany Catholic Diocese inaugurated its media office in 1985, spurred on by its affiliation with the Catholic Telecommunications Network of America. CTNA, the network owned by the U.S. Catholic bishops, supplies Albany with Catholic TV and radio, which the diocese receives over its own 5-meter satellite downlink. Besides radio and TV programs, CTNA offers teleconferences to its viewers, whereby people across the country are linked together at one time via satellite, speaking to one another and sharing an educational experience they'll long remember. The most noted of these teleconferences are the series from the National Pastoral Life Center and Pentecost 87. The Diocese of Albany brought these programs and continues to bring teleconferences to its people. Not only is Albany placing CTNA programs on cable and broadcast stations in the diocese, but it also runs 2 24-hour-a-day Catholic cable TV channels on 2 separate cable systems. In addition, It produces a weekly hour-long TV program aired each Sunday on Albany's ABC affiliate. Besides these programs, the diocese produces videos for its own offices as well as diocesan-affiliated agencies. As the 51st market in the United States, TV production costs in Albany are low when compared to New York City. This, combined with the ability the diocese has to produce its own quality programs and videos, gives Catholic media the advantage to conduct its communications ministry in a manner reflective of our Catholic tradition. Now that the province has entered into a partnership with the diocese to use Catholic media as a production center for provincial videos as well, the province can take advantage of the opportunities already established by Catholic media and also climb aboard for the journey into the world of electronic media, which will indeed influence our ministry in the 1990s and for many years to come. Well, that concludes this month's edition of Center Stage. I do hope you enjoyed it. Again, let me know what you think. Send me your ideas, your comments, or the names of friars who you feel should have a center stage in our province. Our address is Catholic Media, 40 North Main Avenue, Albany, New York, 12203. Next month, we'll hear from Anthony Carrozzo as he shares his reflections on the document from Chapter 87. He'll be joined by Richard Biasiato and Dave Schlauter as they reflect on the document as well. We'll also be joining Richard Hasselback with Religion and the Law, and we'll be visiting Arch Street as it's celebrated Ash Wednesday. So 2 things to remember now. Keep the tapes circulating so that all the friars can see them, and also be on the lookout, because you never know when you'll find yourself on center stage.